Are we live? These are the questions I have to ask. Do, 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 do. Are we live? These are the questions I have to ask. Do, 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 do. Hello, Chidozi Omissa. You'll have to bear with me with all this. I'm very stupid. Okay, the chat's coming in now. Just realised there was an echo for that whole thing, so that's fun. All right. I'm just going to get started, and hopefully you guys will let me know if I'm just effing this up completely. So, hello everyone. Welcome to the 13K Q&A. Yeah, it feels weird not having a script in front of me and just riffing like a cool guy. I've got like basically 33 questions from when I asked this before when it was the 12K Q&A. So thank you everyone for subscribing. And yeah, let's just get into it. I'm just going to start reading out what what the questions I have. God, I'm so nervous. All right, I'm just gonna just get this up. First one was from Gary Nichols, who actually, for those who don't know, he's been subscribed to me basically since the start, since I was doing all the videos were just sort of like about me. I did a series called The Playoff. So thank you for sticking around, Gary. He asked two questions, very cheeky of him. You've switched positions in the backs a few times. What have you learned from each position? So I have played basically every position in the backs apart from scrum half. So I recently moved to 10, but most of my like sort of academy rugby when I was with WAS was at 12. And you basically, you from the centres, you learn, I guess, just it's rugby at its most basic form. I think playing 12, it's sort of like you carry when your 10 asks you, you distribute whenever you get the ball if you can, like all that sort of stuff. And it's sort of rugby where I don't have to think the most, if that makes sense. You're in the mid and you're in the middle of play, like in defense, it's the easiest place to defend. It's Yeah, it's just rugby at sort of basic form. 13, it's the hardest place to defend. That Let me tell a long story. When I eventually got into WAS Academy when I was like 16, I was playing fullback before then for like club rugby, and they sort of saw my body type and like my athletic stats, for want of a better word for what you want to call it. And I had to learn how to defend at 13, and it was very challenging and it was very difficult. But a few rules that I sort of got taught that actually helped me were at 13, you're either blitzing or you're just sort of you're drifting, you're softing, you're allowing things to happen in front of you, and then sort of like ushering people to the touchline. They called it staggering, where you say there's a defender in front of you. The defender inside you. You just sort of stay back enough that you can see the back of his shirt, and you sort of maintain that as you're both going across the pitch. And that was probably the most crucial lesson I had to learn in terms of playing at 13. And that sort of informed me from when I went into like men's rugby, and I ended up playing on the wing when I first came into that. and it's sort of like it's basically the same sort of thing, but you're just one out. And instead of having a defender outside you, you have the touchline as your defender. And yeah, so that was 13. When I was learning how to play wing, I think the hardest thing with that is high balls and all that sort of thing. Like there's nothing like experiencing someone box kicking to you and sort of that pressure of just sort of the ball's coming, you can hear the person chasing you down, you can hear all that sort of stuff. But it's a little bit when there's no pressure on you and you catch that first one, it's sort of easy from there. So that's what I'd say about that. And fullback's that, but with a bit more organization and a bit more distribution if you can, sort of thing. You're also catching the ball most of the time in the middle of the park, which tends to be you're against forwards a bit more than if you're on the wing. So that's interesting. Oh God, I've rambled on with that question. And then Gary's second question was, you've played international rugby. How did that come about? Are there plans for more call-ups? So if you don't know, I played for Jamaica 15s, and we played in Bermuda against Bermuda, and it was like one of the greatest experiences of my life. And yeah, that came about because basically I had been involved in like the Jamaica sort of seven setup. I played a few UK tournaments, and and then that just opportunity came around. In terms of more call-ups, before COVID, there was a plan to play in Barbados, and that unfortunately got cancelled. But and that's actually the reason why I wanted to start learning to play 10. I know I'm going flying all over the place with this. Sorry, that's how my thoughts work. But yeah, so yeah, that was supposed to happen. So that was a bit disappointing. But as soon as like the world sort of sorts its shit out, I'd love to play for Jamaica again. And maybe if I get fitter, try and represent sevens. Who knows? I'm a bit self-conscious about my body at the moment. So we'll see how that goes. Let me just check back up on the chat, see if there's any questions I can answer quickly. Uh, duh, 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 duh. Uh, Pedro DM58, sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, says, will you continue the series of role of each position? Yes, that is my plan for basically the future. It's just I get a bit caught up in all the minutiae and detail, but yes, that is all like in the pipeline and all that sort of thing. So hopefully that will be coming out over the course of the next 2 months. It's just I just need to just my ideas just come to me a little bit like, and I get so ideas just sort of like I get very passionate about one thing, and I struggle to deviate from that. But so basically, I've been writing the roll of fly half video for basically the last 9 months, and so I'll keep rewriting it and reshuffling it. So that's a bit annoying, but well, hopefully I'll nail it eventually, because that's the main one I'm focusing on. And then or like the role of the front five, I'll do it as like one really, instead of like the front row and second rows. There's not actually that, when I've thought about it, there's not actually 10 minutes worth of stuff I want to talk about for like each of those, but there is about 7 for both of them, so I'll probably do that as one thing. uh Joseph Philpotts asks, what's your favorite position to have as your captain? uh it's interesting that I playing Playing fly half now, I've realized how much fly halves have on their plate. And before, I always used to think, oh, might as well have fly half do it, because he's already in charge of everything. And it does have its benefits, like if you have like game management people like Sexton, who already are thinking about, like, they're already playing like 4D chess, they're already thinking about everything, and like he'll know when he wants to go for goal, he'll know when the momentum's with him and that sort of thing. But as a as I've realized, goal kicking as well, like when if you're a 10 and sometimes you're lacking in confidence, sometimes you need someone else's voice to push you. I remember Ronan O'Gara used to talk about sometimes how sometimes he didn't actually want to take a kick, but the cat like Paul O'Connor would point to the post and he'd sort of be like, all right, I have to do it, and he'd make it. He'd like surprise himself. And that's actually happened to me a couple times, like in games, just sort of like you don't know your own limits, and you don't sometimes you get what you deserve and sometimes you get more than what you deserve. And so in terms of position that I think is best for being captain, I reckon from any second row to back row, I don't reckon front row is the easiest one for being captain, just because nowadays you have like, if you're playing like semi-pro level, you have rolling subs, and you're like, front rows sometimes don't last the full game, and especially in the pro era. But Ellis Genshin seems to be doing a good job, so maybe I'm wrong on that. But I'd probably say anyone from like second row to back row. So you've got your pack leader who talks to the ref, and then all that can be wrapped up in all that sort of thing. And if you've got a smart player who's like a leader in the team in those positions, I reckon that's your guy. Uh, Billy Hardy asks, what match would you recommend to a new rugby fan to watch? Uh, Obviously, you have the South Africa Japan one, which is like the best game of rugby like I've ever watched in my life. I'd also recommend the Japan Scotland game from the 2019 World Cup, because that is like, you've got Finn Russell at 10, you've got Stuart Hogg in the back line, and you've got like a really expansive Scotland team. There's a lot on the line, there's a lot of jeopardy. And then you've got Japan in their home World Cup. Like, this is the game like to decide whether who's like going through out of these two. Like, that was decided in that game. You've got tomorrow, I think, at 10 for Japan, who's like, I'm a big fan of. It was just a really amazing game, and both those games are on YouTube if you look them up. The Scotland Japan one is on like World Rugby's page. A lot of the games actually, like, Japan play rugby the right way. A lot of games that Japan played in that 2019 World Cup, I would actually recommend, apart from the South Africa one, just in terms of like, that's what rugby's supposed to be. And I think that's the way rugby's actually turning. It's becoming more of a like speed of ball type game. You watch the All Blacks play, and I know my most recent memory of them is playing USA, and you can't judge much from that. But they're the way they do things, they're not breaking teams down by just pummeling them. They're just moving so quickly with such speed, and obviously they have power and they have big ball carriers, but it's just other teams just can't keep up with what they're doing. And I think that's the way rugby's going. Like, Eddie Jones has like switched up his whole mindset basically with his selections, where Simmons and Dombrant are going to be his eights in the autumn, and we'll see how that goes. But I'm assuming he's going to have Marcus Smith at 10 and Owen Farrell at 12, and a choice of either like Tuolangi or Marchant or someone like that. And I'm guessing what they're going to do is try and play like basically how they did against the All Blacks in that semi-final, where it's going to be just relentless pace. And they'll obviously have power because England have big ball carriers, so it won't be completely like the All Blacks. But I think that's the way rugby is going, to get around defenses like the Springboks, who just like smother you in attack with where they blitz in certain areas of the field. And I think that's the way to get around it, is just play so fast that defenses like that can't get set, and they can't feel confident in their press, and then gaps open up, and that's how things go. So very long-winded answer to your question, but I hope I did. Professor asks, what music are you into to pump you up for training or a match? I this is going to sound really stupid, but I used to have a ritual where I listened to As My Guitar Gently Weeps by the Beatles before every game. And now which is a very not pumpy up song at all, but used to get me focused. And now it's Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood from Kill Bill Volume 1, the bit where she's fighting Lucy Liu, I think it is. It's got like a very like Mexican like kind of feel, but I love it. I think it's great. if it was like gym music, like proper pump me up, you've got obviously lose yourself. But I'm a big heavy metal guy, or at least new metal, like kind of like Linkin Park. Got a very soft spot for Nickelback, but I'd say it brings me shame, but it doesn't. It's just good music. So yeah, that's what I'd say there. Uh, let's go back to the question. I've only answered one, so this is going to be this might be a long one. What are your thoughts about rugby? Oh, sorry, this is Callum Caldwell who asked, "What are your thoughts about rugby lad culture and rugby's relationship with alcohol?" I know it puts a lot of people off, myself included, from playing, especially at the university level. Um, I actually did a video on alcoholism in rugby, and I sort of touched on like the university like rugby lad culture. It's it's a bit of a double-edged sword. I enjoy certain aspects of like rugby, like lad culture. I enjoy having a drink with my mates and being a bit like rowdy, like in a contained environment, like at like the clubhouse. It's interesting. Like at university, there's no older players usually to sort of put a cap on what can happen, and you get like certain traditions like you hear stories about like pigs heads, like being like playing a game with a pig's head and sort of like um wearing like diapers and sort of only being able to like you like can't get out of it until you finish your drinks and stuff like that. And it's sort of like that's sort of slightly over the line. But I remember doing my initiation at a club called Wimbledon, and it was like Edward cider hands where you had like two bottles of like wine where you had to like finish them before you got off the coach, and like I remember that being fun. And so it's sort of like a weird line of like consent, isn't it? Because I never played. I in my brief month at uni, there's something about me. I never played uni rugby, and I never went to the union like training or anything because I was concerned about like if I say no to like certain stuff, will I get hazed or whatever you want to call it? It is interesting. I think it depends on the boys slash girls. Like yeah, you just gotta. It is something to be wary of, and it's something that we need to get a hold of. Actually, the more I think about it, because people shouldn't have to feel wary about joining certain clubs. If you enjoy a sport, you enjoy a sport, and it shouldn't that enjoyment shouldn't be jeopardized. And rugby lad culture as a whole is very it's very difficult because when booze is involved with anything, things can go wrong. It's and yeah, it's just a hard one. I'd say you just have to be wary of like who you're doing it with. Like the club I'm with at the moment, Amersham Chiltern, I'm very happy with how the boys are and stuff like that, and that helps a lot and being comfortable in that environment. So when the sort of laddish antics, like a naked bus or a I don't know, like initiations for people having to eat something like Weetabix or something, when that fun stuff happens, you can be comfortable in it because you know it won't ever go too far. And I think that's very important when you're choosing where you play. And university is hard because it's where you're studying. So it's a very hard line. I don't think I've actually answered the question, but those are my thoughts on it. Luke Porter, if you could convert one non-rugby pro athlete to rugby, who would you pick and what position would you put them in? I would be very curious to see if like Tyreek Hill, I think his name's Tyreek Hill. He plays for the Chiefs on Pat Mahomes' team in the NFL, and I'd be very curious to see how he'd do in rugby because he is like American sports. Like when you're considered athletic over there, you're like the real deal, and the way he moves, I'd be very curious to see how. Same with Saquon Barkley. I think I'm pronouncing his name right. He's a running back for the New York Giants, and I'd be very, very interested to see how he do. Because actually, Saquon Barkley instead of Tyreek Hill, actually, because Saquon Barkley his stuff is agility. He can beat people one on one. He runs a bit like how Anthony Watson does when he beats people one on one. It's not like a he's not doing like a move like the way Quay Cooper steps, where he's doing like a 1-2 and he's sort of that. Anthony Watson's just sort of like treading water, and then he makes a decision on which way he goes, and that's what Saquon Barkley does with like spins and stuff like that. So seeing him, it's you have to be realistic in terms of what position you'd put him in 15. So you'd obviously bring him on the wing, so it's less responsibility. But if he'd actually grown up with rugby, his ability, him as a 13 would be, oh, it'd be unreal. Uh, Bruh KK asks, what are your thoughts on the current youth development paths for budding professionals? Is there anything you would significantly change about it? It is interesting. Like part, I can only really speak for England. Like your pathway into like academy rugby, if you're like an aspiring young rugby player. Like I remember, I like through your school, you used to get recommended to go to like School of Rugby, is what they called with WASP. So I grew up in Harrow, which is in Middlesex, and that was the thing. It was like the School of Rugby was Middlesex, and it was connected to WASPs, and um, that's how sort of people got like scout. You go to like 2 sessions, maybe a month on like a Saturday or a Sunday, and you do that, and there was like a group. They were called Roses and Saxons, I think, and the bottom one was Saxons. And I remember I was stuck in there for ages, despite playing for the middle, being a starter for Middlesex from under 14 to under 16, and I just wasn't rated in that way where you were brought into Was Academy, and basically everyone who started in those Middlesex games ended up playing at Was Academy, and the academy manager at the time just didn't rate me. And because I was in Middlesex, I didn't really have any connections or whatever to like try and go to like another kind of, because the way it works in England, for those who don't know, there are certain counties who have certain academies running up. So Middlesex, it was Wasps. Hertfordshire, it was Saracens. Buckinghamshire, it was Wasps. Berkshire, I can't remember who had Berkshire, but you get what I mean. It's sort of like that's the way it was done, and I I don't know how I would change it, because you've got like, was it 13 or 14 academy, like regional academies, all funded by the RFU. For a bit, there was Bedford Blues Academy and Ealing Trialfinders Academy. Like they were trying to become part of that, and I played for both of those. But eventually, both of those didn't end up continuing because they weren't funded by the RFU. Like like Ealing got players like Rion Joseph, who doesn't play rugby and was one of the one of the best players I've ever played with, and he ended up playing first team for Ealing when he was like 18 or 19, and so as a pathway, and I knew people who've played for like Bedford Blues Academy who are now still playing full time and had played for Bedford Blues first, so it was working, but it seems to only work when you're funded by the RFU and one of those teams who are like either a shareholder in the Premiership or just sort of part of that. It's a very closed knit kind of thing. I remember London Welsh tried to start an academy, and that either didn't happen or it coincided with their sort of falling down the leagues. But it is it is very interesting in this country. Get it's hard to get things going because you sort of everyone looks after each other. Like the reason like power stays where power is, and they're very conscious of that. And so I would say that if an academy was wanting to have an edge, I would suggest going to more inner city schools at younger ages and picking people up with athletic potential, because in the forwards especially, certain people just can't hack it in the prem, and so when you get certain like kids who are like 6'2" or whatever, and they're in like year 7 and sort of like or like 12 or 13, you're sort of like, there's so much athletic potential in places like in cities like London, Manchester, where like immigrant families have like come over. Like There's a great documentary that Ben Obano did that explains this way better than I can. But like the contributions of like Nigerians to like England rugby and like Jamaica, it's there's the talent is there. It's just that rugby isn't accessible to them. Like I only play rugby because my dad played and he loved it, and I saw his videotapes and I fell in love with it. But where I grew up, like in Wembley, rugby isn't a thing. It's like, yeah, it's just not like that's just the way it is. Like working class kids, like around London, a lot of them, it's just not on their radar. It's not like up north where rugby league's like a working man's game. So that's sort of like that's an option. And even then, it isn't even on some other people's radar like that because rugby league's quite a niche sport. So there's a lot of untapped potential. Even not just talking about like working class kids, like so many people fall through the cracks, and there have been people who've attempted to make like agencies for people who do fall through the cracks, and like they do like programs and stuff like that. But those don't the ones that I remember from when I was younger, they're not around anymore because they need to be funded, and maybe it's something that the RFU should probably look into, and that I think that's probably what needs to happen. But will it? That's a whole other question. Let me go back to the chat to see what else, see what people have been saying. Uh, do, 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 do. Kind of a tangent to the previous question, but do you prefer to be calm and focused pre-game rather than aggressive and pumped up? So now that I've started playing fly half for basically the last year, I need to be calm rather than pumped up. But it is a very difficult balance because often in defense you need to be wired. I think defense is all about heart. It's literally you do need technique, but so all of it, to be honest, 90% of defending is not being soft, and you've just got to put yourself and your body on the line. And sometimes it's hard. I find that hard when I'm playing 10 because my mind's doing all these sort of things, thinking about all these things that we need to be doing. And then when you're defending, you need to click back into it being all instinct, and you need to click back into it being all about just getting off the line when you can and just putting someone on the ground. And I think that's why you see a lot of, because I used to think like, why do so many tens not defend like ferociously? And you see like them, like if they're at 12 they'll sort of like be a bit more about it. And I think the conclusion is it's a very it's a very difficult balance to strike with your mentality during the game. Like at 12 when I play that, it's all instinct. It's all just I'm just going, I'm just sort of doing. I'm not acting, I'm not reacting, I'm acting, I'm proactive. And with 10 you've got so many moving parts, it can be very difficult to get like that. So the only person I've seen sort of there's two people that come to mind, but like Owen Farrell, like Johnny Wilkinson's the main one in terms of like he got up for defense. Like you see in this documentary you talk about, he like loved it, and I think that's the reason he could do it because like defense was the part of it that he loved, and he really liked being a small guy who could hit people back. Smaller guy, he was like 5'10", but you get what I mean. And Owen Farrell, when he gets it right for Saris and they're all going forward and he's belting people in defense, and that's their whole thing. And like they used to have that Wolfpack thing about defense that Paul Gustard brought in, and that sort of Owen Farrell is he's very inspirational in that way. And I think it sort of clicked with me a little bit why he's so respected in the game, because he's just sort of he's just so about it. And when it's going well for him in attack, which I think it's not the weakest part of it, it's sort of like an 8 out of 10 in terms of attack. He's nowhere near as skillful as like George Ford, Marcus Smith, like all those other blokes. But it's just like he does the job, and then he gives it so much effort, it's never gonna be a question of like, does he want it? And I think when he gets the results as well, and with Saracen, like that Saracens game against Wasps that I was watching through my hands sort of thing, where they just took us apart in the second half. I was thinking like that's Owen Farrell. That's like the attacks clicking, they're playing about with it. He's not actually doing anything that flary, but he's moving the ball quickly, and it's about speed and it's about aggression, and he kicks his goals as well. So just to answer your question, like I prefer to be calm and focused when I'm playing 10, but with other positions, I've played in the back, so I'd like to amp myself up, maybe listen to some Papa Roach or something like that. Now I want to sing, but I'm not going to sing on the stream. Do, 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 do. What Matt asked us, what are my thoughts on rugby in North America? I think they it's interesting. Like I wasn't very impressed with how the team performed against the USA, and I think they didn't show themselves in a good light. But in terms of behind the scenes, it all seems to be ticking along quite nicely in terms of the MLR, like starting to pick up speed, and like that sort of like establishing itself as a like a league to go to. Not like it's a bit like the MLS at the moment in terms of like players sort of at the end sort of going over there. But I reckon it will click. They've just got too many people for it not to. That phrase too big to fail. It is true. Like it will be in the next 30 years, yeah, which is a long time. But I reckon 20, 25 years, they'll get to the point that Japan got to in 2015, and then we'll see how it goes. And hopefully they get a World Cup and a Women's World Cup, because I think that's the sort of thing that really could get a big boom going. And there's so much talent over there. It's ridiculous. Like the amount of like the level of athlete that doesn't make it in the NFL. It's ridiculous. Like if you ever want to watch like in terms of like rugby YouTubers, like Odo Beckham Jr., sorry, his cousin, I believe, he's started playing rugby in the last year, and he's a YouTube channel, and he goes through that, and it's fascinating to watch because he was a winger at the start, and now he's been moved to loose head prop, and you think about the kind of athlete that can do that, you're sort of like, oh, okay. And like you watch the clips, and on the wing he was doing all right, but he was sort of like struggling with it. And then you put him at prop, and then you see the highlights. He's scoring like hat tricks in games, and he's sort of like, oh, that's the kind of like game breaking loose head. Like that's the kind of talent where you're strong enough to play at the loose head, but you're also rapid, and you're looking at, if they get it right, which will take a while. Like a lot of things had to fall in place, and for Japan to succeed, and I've talked about that before, like what you need to become from a tier 2 nation to a tier 1 is probably 8 years of 2 world-class coaches, and then a crop of players that are good enough, like basically 5 really good players that can go toe to toe with like the world's best. And so that's why I say like about 20 years. But if anyone can do it, they can. And I feel a bit sorry for Canada because they're going through it. They're getting, oh, it's rough. I'm apologizing if I'm mispronouncing your name here. Mutswario Mwemba. How do you think rugby in the UK can become more inclusive across class lines? I think we have a bit of snobbery in this country in terms of we talk about like rugby. I've done a video on rugby values and how I think a lot of it's propaganda and us patting ourselves on the back. We do need to get rid of the perception of rugby not being for everyone. Even though the whole point of rugby is that anyone can play it, the we just need more people from more diverse backgrounds. Like we can commend ourselves in terms of in England, we've got like Ellis Genju's a captain of Leicester, he's mixed race. Lewis Ludlam's a captain of Northampton, he's mixed race. Maritoje is one of the best players in the world and probably will end up being Sarri's captain and England captain at some point. Like there are these people who are like breaking down barriers and being trailblazers and sort of coming from different backgrounds. We just have to make it easier. These people shouldn't have to be such special people to make these strides, and that there's no concrete answer for it. There's no we just have to be doing more. Like whenever these sort of things, like you're like whatever we're doing, like it'll be good. Like what people are trying. I'm never going to accuse people of like not trying to make the game inclusive, but whenever that question is asked, you like just have to be like, what should you just have to say more? Like, what can we do more? Like, wherever you're doing more of it, like just put more as much effort as you can into it, and the results will like the thing is we know it will work. We know it like the more people playing rugby, the more talent there is, the more diversity is, the more everything benefits. We know that it will work. It's just getting the right people in the right places to make change, and that takes a lot of time, which is unfortunate. But as an individual, I guess all we can do is try and do our most, and then what will be will be. Uh, uh, Densetsu 12 just popping in to say hi. Say I just popping in to say I love your content and thanks for sharing it. Cheers from Montreal, Canada. Wow, Matt. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it, man. Uh, uh, Pianst Tris, I'm really sorry. I'm just an idiot. I can't. I'm really sorry about the pronunciation of this name. I started being interested in rugby a few months ago, and all the work and love you put into these videos really helped me get into it even more. Cheers from Canada. Another one from Canada. Wow, what's that? Maybe I should migrate over there. Be with my people. Uh, Archie Clements asks, how many Jamaica caps do you have? Just the one. But actually, I played in the under 23s Jamaica game over here in England at Maidenhead. It doesn't count as a cap, but I am 5 from 5 for Jamaica in terms of kicks, and that speaks for itself. Like only 2 of those kicks were in front of the post as well. So need I say more? Finn Lang just got landed with a 2-year injury. How would you cope? Pierce, love you. Oh, sorry to hear that, man. That's really rough. The longest layoff I've ever had was 6 months because I messed up my shoulder pretty badly. But I think what gets if you can stick around the club as much as possible and try like if you're playing like club rugby, I'm assuming, or like even school, just try and be involved as much as you can. If like this is one like I'm assuming rugby's one of the things that you love, and just to find an avenue where you can keep enjoying it. Like when I got injured, I got really into editing like rugby clips and all that sort of thing. And a lot of pro players, that's what they get really into the nuts and bolts of it, the analytics, and you can like I think the lesson there is they say to players like further your mind, like your rugby brain sort of thing. Do the things that you couldn't do while you're playing, and hopefully that can be fulfilling. It was for me like I know I've spoken about it a few times like during the stream, but learning how to play fly half has been one of the most like creatively fulfilling things I've ever done because I had to study so much, and it just gave me a new way to enjoy the sport. And like stats and analytics is a rabbit hole that is like very intense, and you can learn a lot about the game from it. You do have to take it with like a pinch of salt sometimes, just because like they say numbers don't lie, but you can sort of like some numbers have an agenda sort of thing. But my advice to you is like I know it's rough, so I feel you on that, and I've been there, but there are other ways to enjoy the game and try and find them in your time off. But yeah, uh, PN. Oh no, I've done that. What? Sorry. Uh, Interfere asks, are you keeping up with the progress of Jamaica Sevens? I'm still in the group chats. They have like training sessions like a couple times a month. So I've just been focusing on 15s at the moment, but I do want to get back into it because I'd love to play. I've got like a few of my mates who've played like at Hong Kong and like in the like now in like the what series or whatever it's called. So yeah, I'd love to. You just got to be fit enough. Like sevens is a very athlete based sport, so you just got to get yourself to a certain point. And I know I can get there. It's just the matter of like doing it, and it's easy to talk, but so yeah, but it's on the. It's I will do it before I die. That's all I know. Maurice Minogue, what's your favorite Irish team? Connacht. That is my favorite Irish team just because it just feels the most real. Like I remember the Total Rugby when they used to do that. They used to talk. They did like a documentary style thing about like pro rugby and like the realities of it, and like they did like certain perspective, like from South Africa, from New Zealand, and they did one on Connacht, and like you saw the facilities there and all that sort of stuff. It reminded me of like the old school Sale Sharks, kind of like really like proper old school. So yeah, from those roots, I like Connacht quite a lot. Munster are pretty cool. And if I was a rugby, if I was like I was gonna say if I was a rugby player, if I was a professional, I'd want to have played for Connacht. Sorry, for Munster in my career, because like playing in front of those fans must be amazing. Wilfred Rice, what do you think of Quins? Um, I, as a Wasp fan, obviously, I'm very jealous. Both of like the amount of like English talent they have, and yeah, I'm just jealous, man. Like Wasps used to be a London club, and I understand why they moved, but it's like, ugh, they've just they've just done it, man. I admire them quite a lot, and I love what they're doing for the Prem, and like I love I love the way rugby's going and how they're at the forefront of it. And I wish Eddie Jones could take his pride at the door and just pick Danny Care, but I'll take two out of the three. I'll take Don Brennan Smith. So yeah, Quins are great. Quins are awesome. Rodens. Any tips for trying to captain for the first time? P.S. Love your vids. They are a highlight of my when I'm ever see. Oh, thank you very much. But um, I I have is story time with Noah. I captained my school team only from under 15s to under 16s because our actual captain, who was like our captain from like year 7 to year 9, got injured. Like he hurt his shoulder and he couldn't play. But I always was jealous because ego was I thought I was the best player on the team, and I thought that should make me captain. And that's how it was for the first game in year 7, and then that the role was swiftly taken off me after a like 40-0 defeat to Whitgift in a game that we had no right to be playing. I don't know how it happened that we ended up playing them, but what I actually learned from observing and then actually getting my go around to captain my under 15 and 16 team to Middlesex Club glory. I'm just saying, the only Savo team to ever do back to back. Sorry, but what I learned was you don't actually have to say that much. You, I think a lot of the time captains, like you see, like in a Colts team, you'll see the guy who's captain. He thinks he has to give like a big speech, and what I think is you just have to be yourself. Whatever got you to the point where you were chosen to be captain, continue to do that because you're either clearly a leader already or you're a person that people respect their game. So if you're a person who leads by example, doesn't talk the match, that's what you do. If your thing is you're a big communicator, then continue to do that. But just be authentic because people can smell lies. People can sniff out bollocks. Like, well, sorry, but they can. People can feel it in the air when you're not being genuine. So just be yourself. You don't keep it short and sharp. This is whatever you feel comfortable with, you do, and then your game will take care of itself. So that would be my advice on that. Um uh, Matt S, who are your unicorns in rugby? Like someone who plays like their build shouldn't, like Porzingis and Luca in the NBA. Will we see more? Will we see a more positionless total game? Well, I'm trying to think. I don't like Israel Folau, but he was an incredible player and something very unique in terms of his skill set, his height, his speed. Trying to think of someone like you got. For those who don't know, Porzingis is a 7'4" basketball player whose skill set isn't in being this massive guy. He's a skill guy. He's a subtlety bloke, and I think Mar Nonu is the only person I can think of until that because he's like the perfect player. Like I want to do a video, spoilers for the future, about how I think Mar Nonu is the greatest inside center ever and maybe the greatest rugby player ever. And I think he would be the greatest rugby player ever if he kicked goals and played 10. And he could have played 10 in terms of open play. He had the skill set for it and everything. But he had the power, he had the pace. He could play anywhere, and he had the subtlety, he had the kicking game. He was like one of the best passers I've ever seen, and it's a different kind of passing when you're passing from 12 because you've got to straighten up, you've got to run forward and then pass the ball. You're almost throwing it against your momentum. It's not like at 10 where a lot of the time you can stand and give it. He's just incredible. I think that's the closest I would say to like a unicorn in the game sort of thing. Uh, Will DW asks, what advice would you give to your younger self? It would probably be something a bit really deep, but I'd say don't leave anything to chance. Work hard, otherwise you'll have regrets about what you didn't do. Always. Oh, actually, this Webby. Never be embarrassed of working hard. But I remember when I was younger, I used to think like just being naturally talented was so much cooler than being like a busybody working hard. But it sounds very sounds like something Terry Crews's character would say in Brooklyn Nine-Nine. But working hard is cool. But in a rugby context, I'll bring it round to every trainer session. I like to get there an hour early so I can do my kicking and all that sort of stuff. And that extra effort is something that I didn't do before I started playing 10, but it's something that earns you respect. And I think that is so much more valuable and feels so much better than people admiring your talent. Like anyone can be talented. It's a weird thing, but not everyone works hard. Like and working hard can get you so much further and earn you so much more because people respect it. And it's actually the thing that I admire most in people with good work rate. Like this comes to like friends, like I was about to say women, but partners, like whatever. Someone who's driven and will do whatever it takes to get what they want. That's attractive as a like someone you want to be around as like a friend, like someone you want to be in like a relationship with. Like that's something that like gives you charisma and gives you value and people want to be around it. So if I was going to say anything to my younger self, just give everything your all and you won't regret anything. Uh, Joshua Briley Ward, do you think New Zealand will ever be as dominant as they were during the 2010-2016 period? Um, Maybe, like I was thinking about these autumn internationals and Wales look like this might age badly, but Wales look like they're probably going to get the treatment on the weekend. And you just think that in terms of the quality of players, like the All Blacks are just incredible. But then you've got, luckily, the Springboks are really good. But it will be interesting to see how the Northern Hemisphere does. It, I hope they don't. I hope the Southern Hemisphere don't pull away. Um, but we will see. I am concerned about that. Hopefully, it's I'm just sort of like prisoner of the moment sort of thing, thinking about how good the All Blacks are. But we shall see. Hopefully, Ireland can get back to where they were like at 2018, and Wales are, despite like what's happening with their squad and them, they are a good team, and so yeah, we'll see. But it is a concern of mine currently. I'm gonna be honest. Robert Smithson. Speaking of which, I love the video on Italian rugby, NGJ. Oh, thanks, buddy. Rio Bennett. Who do you think is the closest player at the minute to Mar Nonu? Oh, oh. To be honest, no one's close. But uh, if David Havili was more of could like you could punch him up more, like in terms of like as a ball carrier, he's got a very similar like classy vibe about him at 12. If Laumape is Marnonu when he first came through at the Harlequins. Sorry, not Harlequins, Hurricanes. Like if he could do what Marnonu did in terms of like, I'm sure it's not a question of effort, but in terms of like commit yourself to like having an awesome passing game to the point where you are one of the best passers in the team, and then having a kicking game, I reckon Laumape could do it, but I don't think that'll happen because he's not got the pressure of like being the All Blacks 12 anymore because he's gone to Stade Francais. But Lamapi is one of my favorite players in terms of just being freakishly, violently strong and very quick. So if anyone was going to do it, it'd be Lamapi, but it'd be. I was hoping Manu Tuolangi could do it, but it's not happening. It won't happen. Both because English rugby is structured in a certain, not structured in a certain way. Like English rugby, you plan to win. No one's gonna be like to Manu now. Like he's probably in his late 20s now. Like, oh, I want you to be the man on it. We missed the window on that. In terms that was the chat in 2016. That's what Eddie Jones wanted from him to become that kind of player. And it just injury wise, it just wasn't happening. But he could have it could have been, but now no one's gonna commit to that kind of project sort of thing. So that's unfortunate, but is what it is. Um, Harry Brown, Jason Robertson, or Shane Williams in the Prem. Jason Robinson, man. I'm very biased, but Jason Robertson. Um, Williams Williams is very good, but um, he got found out a lot of the time against really good teams. Um, whenever I was never confident when he played against the All Blacks. I know there's probably a clip of him doing something really cool against the All Blacks, but against whenever he was against like a really good winger would like do up Shane Williams every time, like in terms of like just they'll have the speed and the strength, whereas he's got the speed and the agility. But if yeah, so Robinson just the guy, man. He's the ultimate professional. That I could do a whole hour talking about how much I read Jason Robinson. So yeah. Uh, Maurice Minogue, Bod versus Nonu, who's better? Nonu. Straight Nonu. I remember when I was young, I do get that Brian O'Driscoll is an amazing player, but I always used to. It was weird when I was younger. I didn't get it, and you do have to like watch rugby more to sort of get. I got the tricks and like how he's just like amazingly flary and he was just so classy. But in terms of like effectiveness, I didn't really get it until I studied it a bit more. And obviously his class speaks for himself, but nah, Nanu's the goat. Quote me. Uh, I've been going for like almost an hour now. So I had like 33 questions that I haven't answered them because I've just waffled. So I might do that in a separate video and just answer them. But just let me just answer more of the chats and I'll answer all those questions in another video and it'll be edited together like smoothly and stuff like that. But just before I forget to say it, like this has been really fun, like chatting to you guys and all that sort of stuff. Sorry, and I think I'll probably do this like every Friday night because I play on Saturdays, so I might as well do this and sort of like get more engaged with you guys. You guys can get to know me a bit better. So yeah, I'll answer these next few, and then on the hour I'll love you and leave you. Um, Rodens, what do you think on, especially in youth rugby, oppositions being physically bigger than yourself or the team? Uh, it is hard. That's physicality is such a massive part of rugby, isn't it? It's it is what being a forward is based on in the pro game. Like, well, in this country anyway, sort of like your effectiveness physically, be that size for the line out, pushing in the scrum, whatever. Um, you do get mismatches, don't you? It can get rough in youth rugby. I know New Zealand do a weight thing until like under 11s, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. But yeah, it can get rough. I think all you can do really is, which I know it's easier said than done, is like teach good technique into like chop tackles, like they work, like hitting someone low, it works. And you just gotta teach people to like get round that sort of thing. But at the youth level, sometimes it can be ridiculous. Like the guy, like some like right hand fending the whole team and just running around. It is a hard one that I don't think I have an answer for you there. Bowden Barrett, top five, number 10 ever. Agree? Oh, I don't know. You've got so many. I reckon two of his teammates are better. Like might be top five, like Richie Mwanga and Dan Carter. There's so many. He has been World Player of the Year. Oh, I honestly don't. I can't name my top five because I'll miss out someone and I'll be upset. I'll be upset with myself. But I'm gonna say no, which seems very harsh, and I'll rethink this. If I sleep on this, I'll leave a comment on this stream afterwards. I changed my mind and I'm sorry. So there's my answer. Healthily sitting on the fence there. Do you think anything is wrong with the current youth development system in the UK? Would you change anything? I sort of answered that earlier in the stream. Um, it 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 works enough. The short answer, it works enough, but we could be doing more. That's the short answer. um, Harry Brown, Johnny May, or Josh Lucy. Funny story about Josh Lucy. I met Josh Lucy at a party, and I was like 14, and I basically like Wasp fan, massive England fan, like Josh Lucy. I'm seeing him. I'm like, oh my god! All right, I go over to him, and I'm like, oh, Josh, I'm a big Wasp fan. Oh, I like love your rugby, and he sort of cut me off before I said rugby, and he just went, oh, and walked off. And for that reason, Johnny May. um, do you think the United States could host the 2027 or 2031 Rugby World Cup? What do you think it would do to the growth of rugby? So I sort of talked about that earlier, but either. I just want it, and I think it would be great. It'd just be like the Rugby World Cup had been in Japan. That was just awesome, and it was. I think what made it good about Japan, actually, the more I think about it now, is that Japan were decent and they got to the quarterfinals. So maybe 2031, that should be the goal. Um, yeah, there's a lot of headway to go, but if you can do that, that's like the perfect way. Like emerging nation hosting the World Cup gets the quarterfinal. That's like the dream. And obviously, World Rugby wants USA to be like part of the conversation in rugby, and they'll probably be doing everything they can to make something like that happen. It's just whether they're ready to do that. 2031 though, I reckon it's possible with a bit of luck and some good coaching. I reckon you could do it. Uh, what are your predicted England centres for the Six Nations? Predicted is Farrell and Tuolangi if they're fit. What I want is Lawrence and Marchant with Smith at 10. Lawrence at 12, Marchant at 13. Playing as high tempo as you can. That'd be delicious. That was Chidozie Amissa. Sorry, I didn't say your name. Matt S. Will these live streams stay up? Yes, they will. Uh, I'm nobody. I was about to say I'm nobody. Do you think if the Soviet Union came back, would you think they would make the knockout stage of the rugby? Um. Uh. uh yeah. Sure. What? Oh my god. Valdis Chuffo. Would you rather a player like Maratoje play for England or play for his family's country origin of Nigeria? So I did a video on eligibility in rugby, and what I said was I think players like Charles Piutau, like Maro Itoje, like Marmonu, should be allowed to, after they've finished playing for like England, New Zealand, whoever, be allowed to like change their allegiance and go to like tier two nation. I feel like not tier two. I don't even know if Samoa and Tonga are tier two nations. They probably are, but like countries like that or like Nigeria, like it shouldn't be as locked as it is because the Rugby World Cup would be so much more interesting if Samoa and Tonga had certain players. And I know it probably won't happen because the big boys are the big boys and it's not in their interest. So they'd be like, oh, no. But like, imagine Richie Mwanga at the end of his career being Tonga's 10 or Marmonu currently being able to play 12 for Samoa, like Mara at the end of his career playing for Nigeria. Like it's 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 such an easy thing to do, and it would just make the whole rugby world feel so much richer. Like the Piutau brothers being able to play together for Tonga, like Katoa being able to play for Tonga, like these, it's it's very frustrating. But I'm very in favor of people being able to like. I'm Jamaican English, like I support England at the World Cup, like I'm like, oh, I'm so about it for England, but I'm also you can be two things. Like yeah, it's very frustrating that that's not a thing in the rugby world that we do because in rugby league they kind of do it and everyone's happy about it because because the reason they did it is because their rugby world cup, it's sort of like because not as many countries have such a big rugby league following. They did it so that players that increase the overall quality of the tournament. It makes sense. That's what I think. Matt S, what are your thoughts on international eligibility? Oh, we've just covered this. Certainly helps lower tier one nations with established leads, but not so much tier two nation. Yeah, I just echo what I just. Sorry, I'm not answering your question that well. Oh, based on residency. It can be abused, but I think it's a heart's in the right place kind of thing, like the eligibility rules. And like if people abuse it, I think that's just sort of the price you pay for like having something good. Like if I ever moved to a country and became a citizen, I'd want to be able to play for that country. And like I think that's something that I get people getting frustrated. Like you'd see like um, players like CJ Stander and like Van der Fleer for Ireland, and like people be like, oh, if who cares, man? Just if you if you live somewhere long enough, you yeah, I say like if you live somewhere long enough, like if you live in England long enough, you're English. Like you do certain things, you order like fish and chips on a Friday night. Spoilers for my night's plans. Like it's just people get a bit uppity and get a bit yeah. It's just a bit snobbish. Just piss off. Ram Montilla Smithson. What are your thoughts about Rugby Europe's third level club competition, the Super Cup? I don't know enough about it to speak about it, but any sort of organized leagues in like Europe and like you've got like Italy, you've got Italy's I think it's the top 10, like all anything giving players a further platform to like get better and all that stuff is always a plus like in Europe. Like if we can get like Spain, Portugal, like Germany, all these other countries to like Italy's level, it'll just make the rugby world so much more rich. And so anything to like Georgia have a professional league and have had it for ages, but they're quite it's not it's almost it feels so far away and it feels so isolated, unfortunately. But bringing the Europe's sort of tier two nation, tier three nations up is only going to benefit. So I don't know enough about it, but whatever it is, I'm probably on board. Shane Donovan loved your Danny Cipriani documentary. Thanks, babe. Uh, I'm nobody again. Do you think rugby needs the Club World Cup? No, but I do. I would like to see the Crusaders play whoever wins the European Cup. Like Crusaders versus Toulouse will be meant. Um, in a curiosity way, if we can get a rugby world, like a world calendar going, and we could make rugby kind of like the NBA, where it's just sort of like there's the big league, and we get a world league. Oh, I'm just like fantasizing. It's fun in concept. I don't know how to do it though. I don't think we don't need it, but it would be neat if you could figure it out, if that makes sense. Shane Donovan again. Uh, he's an interesting character. Do you think he could have made a difference in the final 20? Oh, Danny Cipriani. Yeah, he should have been the he should have been the other 10 at that World Cup. I like George Ford, but I think Danny Cipriani's better. But it is what it is. Unfortunately, but it is a what if story. Um, there was actually a question in that's probably going to be it for in terms of like answering questions in the chat. Thank you so much to everyone who's asked a question. I was very worried that this would flop and there'll be no one in the chat, so this has like made me very happy, and I'm thankful to all of you like in the chat and anyone who's watched this so far. But there was a question. I need to research this to give him his shout out because it was an interesting question. He good. Oh, it was by a guy called JTWB, and he asked, "What do you think rugby's biggest what if story is?" And I initially thought Danny Cipriani's England career, just in terms of like how England we wouldn't have had basically the 2011, so the 2012 to 2015 rebuild job by Stuart Lancaster being headed by George Ford and Owen Farrell, who are a certain kind of player, and it would have like Cipriani from 2008 was the most talented English player in the country, even though he was out of the country after 2010. But you get what I mean. And we sort of would have gone in that direction, and instead we did what we did. Yeah, it's a big what if. But then I actually thought the biggest what if is actually Christian Wade's England career, and if he didn't get injured just before the Six Nations in 2012, because he was in the squad and he was playing amazingly, and Lancaster said he was going to pick him, and that would have changed everything for him. And as a Wasp fan, I do wish he was back at the club because he's like one of my favorite players. But and I did meet him before Wasps under 17s versus Gloucester under 17s. We were playing after the pros played at Twickenham, and we met him just before he was going into the stadium, and he was very nice. So yeah, I do wish he got more than one cap for England. Like that's so stupid. But yeah, thank you so much to everyone for being here tonight. It's been great, and I think I will do something along these lines every Friday night because I want to be more consistent on the channel. And I've spoken about on the channel about like my mental health issues and that sort of thing, and I will get into it more. And I struggle with being consistent because I'm either like all or nothing. Like my brain's just very messy, but I think this will be really good for me and for the channel. So I've really enjoyed tonight, and you're gonna yeah, it's been great, and I've really enjoyed interacting with you guys, and hopefully that can continue. And I hope you guys enjoyed it too. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and you're now going to see me struggle to turn off the stream, and it's going to be very awkward. Cheers. Oh god, this is terrible, isn't it? You're seeing me turn it off. This it's